Okay, welcome to another episode of my channel. Today I am here with Philosophical Zombie Hunter. So maybe I should also say this is an episode or a video of his channel. He also has a YouTube channel. I had a call with Sam Seder, which you might have seen. This is a leftist internet show host of the Majority Reports. A few months ago, I called into Sam Seder's show. He's got over 1 million subscribers, and many people saw it, including Philosophical Zombie Hunter, and he had left a comment on one of my videos shortly after that call saying that there are some things that he was interested in talking about in the wake of that debate. And I was happy to have a conversation about that. So we're going to talk about that, and maybe we'll get to some other issues later on. We'll see as it goes, but we're at least going to start with that topic. So welcome, Philosophical Zombie Hunter. And I guess I can put a link to your channel in my description, and so people can find you if they want. Let me just throw it over to you, and you can take it away.
Thank you for inviting me, Dan. Yeah, I'm have a somewhat of a small YouTube channel where I mainly do debates and some videos about objectivism, but mostly it's long-form debates or long-form discussions.
Okay, I've seen some of those, which has been interesting to watch. So what were your thoughts on the Sam Seder debate? I think you said in your comment that there are some things about that debate that you were interested in talking about. By the way, just before we do that, if anyone wants to see this debate, maybe you would like to watch it first. I don't have a link yet to that on my channel. At least I don't have a video linking to that video. But if you just search on YouTube for Sam Seder, I think the title of the debate on Sam Seder's channel is Ayn Rand Fan Debates Objectivism with Sam Seder. So if you just put that in the YouTube search engine, you can find the debate. So that's what we're talking about, and maybe check that out and then come back here to watch this. But all right, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
This is your claim to fame, Dan, yes?
It's my biggest appearance so far.
Yes. Yeah, so I mean, I think it was a difficult situation, obviously. I don't think that it could have gone much better in the current way it was set up. You basically had two people there trying to kind of essentially make fun of you, not if they wanted to not let you talk and ask you questions to then lead you into some sort of saying some sort of ridiculous answer. They would have let you do that. If you would have started debating with them, then they probably would have tried to shut you down, or the third person would have done research in the background and made it very difficult on you. So I think that kind of setup isn't like a place to have an honest discussion or an honest debate in general. But what were your thoughts?
I'm just taking some notes here, so if you see me looking down, that's fine. So you mentioned the point that it's not really the place to have an honest debate.
No.
And I think that might be right. However, I'm not sure that means it's not good to debate Sam Seder or other people like Sam Seder. So I think one way to look at it is as an advertisement. So I'm not primarily there to engage with Sam as an end in itself. Like, I'm not going to convert Sam. I don't expect to change his mind or the mind of many people in his audience, but he's got over 1 million subscribers. You know, it's a lot of people who are seeing his content. So my hope is to reach a lot of those people, and maybe some of them are more honest I'm not making a claim about anyone's honesty, but I think it's perhaps there are more honest people in the audience who would be open to other ideas, and it's a way to reach those people going on these platforms that have large audiences. And I did get quite a large uptick in subscribers after I went on to Sam's show, much more than I usually get. I've got about, right now I think I have 287 subscribers, and that was up from like 250 something, I think, when I went on the show. So it went up, I think it went up about 30 subscribers very soon after the show, maybe partly as a result of me going on various other, like on Facebook, to let all my friends, Facebook friends, know about the appearance. Maybe I don't know where these subscribers were coming from, but I got a nice little uptick. So I'm not so concerned about the hosts. I mean, I guess if he was so bad, you got to draw a line somewhere. And maybe there's some hosts where I wouldn't go on the show at all, but I didn't think Sam was so bad that it's not worth the potential benefits of going on his show. So that's kind of how I think about that.
I could appreciate that from the outside, it could seem like a good publicity thing to go on his show and try to get like a few minutes in. I think though that he wasn't very charitable with your appearance.
Yeah, I think at least certainly in parts, I think of that debate. So I have called 3 times now, and the one we're primarily talking about here is the second call. So the first time I called in, it actually wasn't debate. It wasn't to debate politics or philosophy at all. I had been in the chat room of his YouTube channel during, I think, one of his previous shows, and people were just saying obnoxious things. Most famously, someone said that I was infertile. Just, I have no idea why, just some silly comments, which I didn't really care that much about the obnoxiousness. I kind of expect that on, channels of people who have very different ideas. But my issue was that I wasn't allowed to block those people. So I blocked some of these people who were making these rude, obnoxious comments. And then I announced in the chat room that I blocked these people. And then the moderator who saw that announcement said, "You have to unblock these people or he's going to block me." I don't know if you saw that call, but anyways, that was I wanted to talk to Sam about that, because I didn't think that was a good policy to have for his chat room, that you're not allowed to block people who are being rude and obnoxious. You have to just sit there and listen to all that stuff. I don't see why that's a good idea. So I called about that. And then about a week later, I called back to discuss objectivism, no longer the chat room policy issue. But he picked up on it early in the call that, "Oh, aren't you the guy who called last week?" And said, "Yeah." And then there was this running joke about, "Oh, now you're the infertile guy who is calling," because that came up in the first call. Now, so the first call about the chat room was only about 10 minutes, like 8 minutes was the clip, I think, that ended up on their channel. These all got clipped and published on his channel. The second call was about half an hour, and that's the one where we debated objectivism, mostly its application to political philosophy. And then it was about, so that was late October. And then mid-December was my third call in which was my last call so far to the majority report. I called in to discuss the island example, or a version of the island example that came up at the end of my second call. So if you search for, just to get this all on record for people who are listening to this and aren't really in the loop, if you search for Sam Seder discovers the YouTube live chat, you'll find my first call. And the second one I already gave, Ayn Rand fan debates subjectivism with Sam. And then the third call is libertarian takes Sam to Coconut Islands. So I'm not a libertarian, and I said that in my second call. I said I'm an objectivist, not a libertarian, but I think they're not really familiar with the term objectivism as much, and I think maybe they think they'll get a lot of clicks if they put libertarian, because he's famous for debating libertarians, and I think his audience has an appetite for that. So maybe that was a way of getting views. But in any case, that's how they titled the video, Libertarian Takes Sam to Coconut Island. The Coconut Island is a reference to this example that another YouTuber who goes by the name Bosch.
I'm familiar with the Coconut Island example.
Yeah.
Thank you. You don't need to describe it to me.
Right. Just for the audience. It's a vulgar example.
You don't need to describe to the audience.
I'm not gonna say concretely what it is, but if you're in the audience and you don't know what this is, if you just Google Coconut Island and Vosh, you'll find out. It's a vulgar example, and it's used to make a point about coercion and whether certain transactions between people are voluntary or coercive, but it's done in a vulgar way. I tried to bring up different less vulgar examples to make similar points in my third call. So now I've laid out the history of my calls, all of my 3 calls to Sam Seder so far. So going back to what we were discussing, we were in the midst of the second call. I don't remember exactly what point you or I were making about it, but let's go back to that now that we've set the lay of the land.
I don't think I've seen the second call. I think I'm not entirely
sure. No, you've seen the second call. That's the one you replied in a comment about. You haven't seen either the first or the third call. If you've only seen one, it's the second call that you've seen.
Okay, then I've seen the one.
Okay, just the second call. Okay, so we can go back to talking about that one now. So you had made a point about them not being honest, and I said, yeah, but there's a value in reaching more people in the audience, or building my own audience by reaching more people. It's not really about changing Sam's mind. And I forgot what you said after that.
I mean, I'm not sure. I appreciate that, you know, it helps to build an audience. I think if you would like to do that, then in the best case scenario, you should do like an in and out kind of thing, like go in, give like a clear, concise message, and then say, I have to go by. Because if like you stay, if you linger there for a little bit too long, they'll basically kind of like toying with. It's not a debate. It's like your entertainment for them. And from what you're describing, you're practically like a regular there now. Got 3 calls in. Anytime you want to go, they'll move you to the front of the line, because they know you already. But you know, it's your call essentially. Like you have to figure out what's best for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have thought about like what is different ways to optimize my appearances there. One thing I really liked about going on his show is how much time he gave me. I mean, the second call was almost half an hour, and this is a huge platform. And I mean, I don't know that there are that many hosts with that kind of audience size that lets just random people call in and stay on for that long. So I was actually quite pleased to be able to stay on there that long. I mean, you can get a lot more points in half an hour than you can in 3 or 4 minutes. So you do run the risk of them making fun of you and being condescending and that kind of thing. But I don't think that's the most important consideration. I think it's more important to get the truth out there. And actually, many people, I think even in his audience, were turned off by him, the way he conducted himself. If you look at some of the comments that people were writing, they're like, you know, I generally agree with you, but you know, you looked really bad. You came off bad, and maybe he lost some fans, or at least some enthusiasm from some of his fans. And I think if I conduct myself in a dignified way and he doesn't, then I mean, the people whose opinion I care about, they'll probably notice that. And so I don't really. I mean, I wouldn't have a discussion with someone who treated me like that in private, one-on-one, but because it doesn't have the upside of being able to reach thousands and thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people. But because I can do that, I think that value outweighs the disvalue of, putting up with some suboptimal behavior, to put it nicely, on his part.
I mean, I can appreciate. So if it was the case that with him making fun of you, he makes himself look bad, that's a plus for you. I mean, I think that because he has support and backup there, in the studio where he's in, then maybe he can like make himself look. I'm not sure, to be honest, but it. I mean, if it was me, but again, you're you, I am myself. And I had the opportunity to speak to someone like Sam Seder. To be honest, I didn't think of doing that, but let's say I did. I would try to get a message in, get like a message that I wanted to. If he says a joke, I would laugh with him, like as in it doesn't really affect me. And then I said thank you for listening to me, and walk away. Similarly, there are some debates where I won't start or walk away midway because I have certain, I don't know, certain standards that I won't debate with I won't debate people who go below these standards. And if like it's not productive, and the guy I'm talking to is like a conspiracy theory nut, I'll be like, okay, this is going nowhere, and I'll end the debate. Not that this is what happened with you and Sam, but I'm just giving an example. But if you are planning on doing other similar things, or debates in the future, is there something you wanted to discuss in terms of strategy or tactics or stuff like that?
Well, just one thought on something you said. You said something like, if you like doing this, okay, go for it. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like there's only one way to do these kinds of things, or that it's like just because I do this, everyone who's interested in objectivism or promoting objectivism should also do this.
We should all nag Sam Seder, like we call him like 90 people like every day, like just like, I'm an
Yeah,
objectivist, like hang on, next one. I'm also an objectivist, like one after the other.
then maybe he'll start using the term objectivist instead of libertarians.
Maybe.
Even when you are an objectivist and say you're not a libertarian, he'll still call you a libertarian. But yeah, maybe if he gets enough people. Yeah, I mean, so not everyone is going to want to do the sort of thing I do, or even like that I am doing it. But I don't think there's just one way to go about this. People have different personalities. They have different goals in life. They have different concerns about being anonymous, non-anonymous. There are all kinds of considerations that go into this. Given my situation, I very much enjoyed having this opportunity, and even though a lot of people, they think like I'm subjecting myself to all its ridicule, but I mean, if I know in my own mind that the ridicule is BS, then it just doesn't mean anything to me. I'm concerned with getting good ideas out there and reaching people, uh, who are open to good ideas. So all the buffoonery and the insults or the mockery, it's just silly. And I think people whose opinions matter, they're going to see through that. So I see it as a positive experience, and I want to do more of this kind of thing. I've got some more debates lined up. Not with Sam Seder, although I would like to call back
don't stop on Sam Seder. Just keep on bang, keep on like going at it. And then next time, by the way, he says, "Oh, you're the infertile one." Yeah. Next time, reply like this. Actually, Sam, I am infertile, and you're hurting my feelings by bringing this up. And I spoke to the rest of my infertile committee, and we're not very pleased with how you're putting us down. I mean, it's very insensitive of you, and just like go like that.
Yeah, lean into the joke. I mean, I could do something like that. When he brought it up in my third call, I guess this is the one you haven't heard yet. I just kind of brushed it off, but my phone, there was some disconnection in my phone for just a couple seconds, so you couldn't really hear what I said. I was just, I said, I'm the guy who, we talked about objectivism a few weeks ago. You remember that call? And he said, "Oh, you're the guy with fertility issues," or something like that. And then I just said, "Sure, if that's what you want to think." Anyway, and then I went on with my points. But when I said, "Sure, if you want to think that, that's fine," that part there was some disconnection in the line, so you can't really hear that. But anyways, I just kind of ignored it because I had higher priorities, more important things to discuss than that silliness.
Maybe we
So
can invite you on the show. Maybe like a face-to-face interview.
yeah, maybe one day I'll get to that point.
Maybe you'll be like a legend of the show.
Yeah, someone actually, or maybe more than one person, called me a legend in the chat room. At least I've been made a meme. There's a bunch of posts on Reddit about me on not just the Majority Report Reddit, but other left wing or BreadTube, as they're called, Reddit pages. So yeah, I got quite a reputation in their community. Some people were saying like this was the best call of the year or one of the top ones. So it's very memorable for good or bad reasons, depending on your point of view. But anyway, yeah, I do plan to do more of it. It actually was not easy to get back on the third time. So after the call that you heard, the second call, it took me like 7 weeks, I think, to get back on. And I was calling back in like almost every day they had a show. And I was trying tricks like going into the Discord and asking their moderators if they can highlight my call or do something to notify Sam that it's me, because he likes to debate libertarians, or at least people who are close. So you would think he would want to take those calls. I was tweeting at Sam a couple times in those 7 weeks to ask him if he wanted to continue the debate, and I emailed them, and I never got any reply. But then finally, mid-December, he decided to take my call again. So I don't know if he was purposely ignoring me, or he had no idea it was me calling, or what. But anyways, it was much harder to get on the third time than it was the second time. I don't know how it's going to go the fourth. Actually, for my next call, the fourth call, if there ever is one, I think I'm going to call on a Thursday, because at the end of the second call, the show producer, Matt Leck, the voice you hear off screen sometimes, he said, he actually suggested that I call back in to talk about A equals A. That's how he put it. So this is a motif in Ayn Rand's writing, well, Atlas Shrugged in particular, this idea of A is A.
I'm familiar.
For the audience, I know I'm sure you know this. So in Atlas Shrugged, there's this theme of A is A, and that's the name of one of the parts of the book. And so the show producer said he wants to talk to me about that, and he suggested I call back in on Thursday, because that's the day that Sam usually takes off each week. So one of these Thursdays, I think I will try to call in and have a discussion about that and whatever else that leads to. But that's the next
Can I make a
call on
recommendation?
my agenda for the majority part. Yeah, go ahead.
I think that if you call back, I think you should leave them hanging for a while. I think you should let some time go by. I think you should do some other things, like, you know, like a sort of like relationship between a boyfriend and ex-boyfriend, ex-girlfriend.
Yeah.
And then, like, before they, you know, like before they started, before it gets too long, then you call back and say, hey, what's up?
Yeah, well, I've let over. I mean, you don't want to be clingy and desperate, and so
Yeah,
like
you don't want to be
nagging
clingy and
them,
desperate.
and so they just get annoyed with you and they don't want you around at all. Space it out a little bit. Yeah, I think there's something to that. And I definitely, since my last call, I haven't tried once, and it's been over a month now. It's been close to 2 months. So I'm hopeful that next time I try to call in, it'll be much easier. Um, but in the meantime, I've been setting up other debates, which I've got one scheduled. I've actually got a time down. I won't
Right.
announce these until they actually happen, and I'm sure I want to publish them. But I do have some other debates in the works.
What are the topics?
One is, it's going to be versus the socialists, so it might just be a socialism versus capitalism kind of debates.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Maybe I was thinking about focusing on the issue of coercion, an issue that
Okay.
came up in my third call to Sam Seder. There's another debate with another socialist I've got in the works, which is, I guess, kind of like a capitalism versus socialism debate, but it's going to be focused, at least in the title, the way it's going to be titled, it's going to be focused on Ayn Rand's defense of capitalism. So her view of capitalism is going to figure prominently, at least in the title.
So you're in the second one, you're explaining her position, or you are?
Yeah, what's her defense of capitalism? So he's going to attack her defense, and then I'm going to defend her defense, or at least say what
Is
her
it?
defense is.
But is it also like this is her position and she's wrong because I have all this evidence that you need to know in advance that she's wrong, and if you don't know how to reply to the evidence, then it doesn't look good?
You mean, is that my opponent's position?
Potentially.
Yeah. Well, I guess he's going to see. I don't know who's going to go first in the debate. Like, if I will make an opening statement and then he will just respond to that, or if he's going to start. So I'm not exactly sure how it's going to go, but somehow or other, he's going to try to undermine her defense of capitalism. Now, hopefully, he's not going to attack a straw man. He's going to get her defense right. If he actually does, well, that remains to be seen. But I guess ideally, the way the debate would go is that we don't straw man her defense. We put on the table what her defense actually is, and then he shows why he thinks there's something wrong with that or something insufficient about it, and I will presumably counter whatever objections he tries to raise against it.
Okay.
And then there's one other debate with a third socialist. I got a lot of socialists on the line, but
I getting these people, by the way?
On YouTube, I find various channels. I've been trying to find people that have relatively large audiences. One of them is smaller than mine in terms of subscribers, but the other two are a lot bigger. Actually, but there's a third, which I haven't mentioned yet. In addition to these three socialists, there's another guy who's not a socialist, but I think he describes himself as right or center right. And he says he has some libertarian tendencies. Sometimes, I believe he said that, but he also has described himself as a statist. I heard him say once. So I'm still trying to get a handle on what exactly his views are. So I've been watching some of his videos, study up on him, and we've got to, actually, I do have a debate set with a date for that debate set up. So I have 2 debates nailed down, and then 2 others which I'm trying to get dates for. They're in the works.
Okay. So the thing is, I'd like to relay concerns. Tell me what you think. So obviously, on the philosophy side, you know, you've got that down. That's not an issue, not even an argument. Um, I think you, I don't think you can rely on that too much in these sorts of debates. The core, obviously, you can, but and coercion, things like that, obviously, you can. But I think a lot of these debates do typically involve uh, like studies or statistics or points of reference, or or just like something they pulled out of their pulled out of their house, like because they went to some a non, you know, 4chan forum or something. Um, so a lot of, the thing that I find, a lot of these debates, sometimes you need to be aware of certain positions that your opponent may take, and you need to kind of prepare for that so it won't surprise you during the debate. And I do notice that you do kind of like go with some of the things in your debates. You go with like a sort of philosophical approach, like, let's think about it. What does this mean? And I'm not saying that's wrong. In fact, I think it's admirable. I just think that in an actual debate, if someone like throws something strange at you, and the example I gave was when someone threw like some conspiracy theory that was half true, half a lie. Because I read up about it. It was so strange what the other guy was saying. I think it was a communist debater you were debating with, and like it just didn't sound right. So I had to research, but I never heard of it before. But the way it was presented is completely false. So it was half false, half true, but obviously half truth is a full lie. So you kind of need to know that reference. I also would have needed to know that reference. You kind of need to know the reference to be able to be in that debate and reply to it. And I'm not sure. I don't know if you've done like the groundwork for a lot of the stuff that Yoron goes after, and even Yoron is like tends to lean on the philosophical side. He obviously knows a lot about the details, but he likes to bring it to the philosophical side for the benefit of his audience. I feel though that the younger debaters now, they like numbers, they like statistics, they like stuff like that. So how do you feel about those sides of the debate? Because you'll have a mixture of different approaches, but I do feel that you will encounter those kinds of points in the debate.
Yeah. So Mouthy Infidel is one guy that comes to mind. He's actually one of the people who I'm in talks with right now about setting up a debate. I know that he likes to cite statistics a lot of studies. And I don't know how much that sort of thing would come up in a debate with him. I mean, it depends on exactly what topic we settle on, how we agree to go about the debate. I'm not sure if I want to go on a channel that has a moderator for a debate like that, or have a more kind of freewheeling chat just on his channel, and make it more of an exploratory kind of philosophical talk. I've been watching some of his videos, and I don't know if he's a graduate student in philosophy, but it seems like he might be, just based on the things he says. His knowledge, he seems pretty steeped in academic philosophy literature, and he says in one video like he spends all day reading philosophy. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a grad student in philosophy. So given that, I think I might want to try to have a more kind of philosophical conversation with him than he often does in the debates I've seen with him, like in the ones that you had or with Yaron, where he's just citing study after study after study. I'm not sure, at least given my interests in knowledge, how relevant or how good of an idea it would be to have that kind of discussion. I mean, you can't be omniscient. There's a limited time, and the sorts of things you can focus on and specialize in. And I'm most specialized in philosophy, and I haven't read up on all these studies, but I don't know that it would be necessary to do that, to have a productive, worthwhile conversation with him. Uh, I've seen one of his videos in particular is, I think it's about, he's comparing and contrasting utilitarianism and egalitarianism of John Rawls, and then the view of this third philosopher, G.A. Cohen, who I guess that's the philosopher he likes the most on this issue, anyways, of his moral perspective, I guess. That video, I think he's more philosophical than in most of his other videos. He's not citing studies all over the place. So I was thinking maybe I should try to have that sort of conversation with him where I don't need to be up on all these studies. And, that way I can play more to my strength. And it would be a worthwhile conversation to have. So that's, yeah, go ahead.
So I'm not entirely pleased that Mouthy keeps debating objectivists. As far as I know, you would be the fourth objectivist he will debate. I'm not sure if he's attracting it or people or he's going after, but either way. Actually, fifth objectivist. I appreciate that you have strength, but you've seen the videos. He will play to his, and I think at the very least, if you are planning to debate economics, you will need, at the very least, to raise your weaknesses to a certain point. Now, as the situation stands, even in objectivism, you have a concept and you have the concretes. If you're coming in with the concepts, the philosophical side, you don't have some concretes, it will look off to the viewers. And in the sense that you'll say, well, this is what Ayn Rand said, and here, look here, here, and here. It's similar in reality, and you can see now. Mouthy would say, here is a principle, let's say by Cohen, which, by the way, Ayn Rand talks about. There's a essay where she talks about Rawls and Cohen. I think it's called Anonymous or Untitled. So you can read up on that because she gives her opinion on that. But if he does, here is the concept, and here are 10 different well-cited studies. Now bear in mind, I'm not saying these are concretes. It's not a concrete in the sense that you and I understand it, but for the viewers at home, if you have a study that says X, Y, and Z, people react very favorably to that. To them, it is a concrete and it is the ultimate truth. That a study was released, even if it's biased, it doesn't, whatever, it does not matter. The fact that there is a study, that is a very strong indicator to them that this is what happens in reality. So painting a picture of concept plus concrete, he has more, you have less. If I'm not sure to how many you have. But if you're planning on playing in the economics area, you need to have more concretes, and you need to start. I don't mean this in this sense, but forming a story, not a lie, but a story where you're showing people how reality works by both zooming in and zooming out. Yeah. Are you familiar with data analytics at all, or data science?
Probably not, unless you describe it. I'll see, oh, you mean this by that, but I'm guessing not.
Imagine charts in Excel or graphs in Excel. So we have graphs in Excel about the economy or different parts of the economy and stuff like that. And you're giving a presentation to someone in an office, to a bunch of people in an office, and you're saying this chart, this chart, this chart, And that's why we think that this is what's happening right now. We have numbers, we have data, and we're telling a story
Mm-hmm.
to summarizing all the different details.
Mm-hmm.
So you, at the very least, like I appreciate, you should stay with your strength. Now, I am a proponent of people doing that because I have many weaknesses that are very weak, but I also have strengths which are strong. I have a bit of Asperger's and a bit of dyslexia, so it just turned out that way. But I would say, even for my own professional career, I just made sure that the weaknesses are not horrible.
I lost your audio. Don't know if you can still
Hello?
hear me. Oh, hold on. Oh, there we go. Now I hear you.
Okay.
I think my plug for the headphone is a little messed
Hello?
up. If that happens again, I will try to switch over to my AirPods, which are charging now. But last thing I heard you say was you were talking about telling stories and um, playing to your strengths.
Yeah, so I'm saying you should strengthen your strength. You should go with your strength, but you should also raise your weak in general. This is general life advice. Raise your weakness so they're like okay-ish. They don't have to be super strong, but they shouldn't be holding you back either.
Okay. So some thoughts on that. In terms of the issue of concretes, I definitely think it's important to have concretes. You don't want floating abstractions. And I was thinking a one way to do that is to cite history, not just like recent studies, which I think tends to be the sort of thing Mouthy will cite, but the broad sweep of history going back hundreds, thousands of years. History is something I've studied a lot of. It's so I have quite an extensive background in that, and I'm still studying it, and I plan to continue studying it for a long time, and I think that will help me in these debates. It's a different kind of concrete or set of concretes than reading up on some studies that have come out in the last few years or something. I suspect that there's a lot of bogus studies, and I think Yaron has said this. Yaron Brook has said this in some of his debates with Vosh or Mouthy, that some of these studies that they cite have been debunked, and it could smooth things out, I think, somewhat if I looked into these myself and were able to say in my own voice, I've looked into these and they've been debunked. Um, in the meantime, until I get to that point, I have, I think, a fairly extensive knowledge of history, which I can rely on for some concretes. But yeah, the more I do this, I think it will probably be good for me to become more familiar with the studies. It's definitely not something I'm against doing. It's just there's an issue of time and priority, and how much value do I get from doing that versus doing other things. And at some point, I wouldn't be surprised if I decide, yeah, I should start looking into these particular studies they're citing, so I have a more ready response, more impactful kind of response to those sorts of things.
Either way, you don't have to. You can take a shortcut in this regard. You can just ask some people to like get like the top 10 most relevant studies or the top 20, and that's pretty much it.
Mouthy cites in one of his videos, he actually links to some of his studies in the description. And I've actually pulled up the web pages of those studies, and I was planning to look at them, and I probably will look at them before I have a debate with him. So yeah, that's, I guess, similar to what you're suggesting. Have someone cite the top 10 or 20 studies. So I will
It's
have
like
in front of me exactly what he's looking at.
so. I think like there's a YouTuber that I recently was introduced to that has a lot of studies. A YouTuber and TikTok person, that has a lot of studies and does actually quite a really good job. Um, so I would check out his channel. He's called Prax Ben, Prax Ben. He's a capitalist, but he does like debunk socialists and stuff like that. Now, Mouthy isn't. He's not going to talk about the same stuff that Prax Ben will talk about. He's basically going to say welfare is good in the same sense what Yaron debated him about. And he's going to say that the Nordic model is good and that we should move in
The
the
what is
direction of
good?
the Nordic model.
Oh, right, right.
And he's going to say that the we should do like what Norway is doing, but more of it. And I did study the Nordic model and Norway quite a fair bit, and I also have family in Norway, which is funny. Um, and yeah, I mean, just have like some understanding of what will be discussed, some understanding of the direction you want to go with. But the discussion that Mouthy will probably do is the same one that he did with Euron. It's not going to vary. Mouthy, I had this debate with him. It's not his position. His position is he wants a moneyless society. He wants like a legit, you know, to each according to his needs, to each according to his abilities kind of society. Um, but I haven't seen him advocate for it unless he's, taking a more courageous position in that direction. He's basically doing like a sort of reformist socialist kind of direction where we pick and choose all these nice policies from social democracies and countries in Europe and countries in Scandinavia and ignore everything else and say if we pick and choose and mix and match we can get what we want, uh, and for each things he picks and chooses there's a study behind it, but there is no, but to some degree, like I was able, or at least maybe I'm wrong, but I was able to like say, well, if you're choosing this model, that's similar to this model over there in Latin America. If you're choosing this, that's similar to that, or there's a risk to doing this. Because I just for my profession, I have more of understanding of systems and complex systems, so I can figure out like if you tweak a system in this way, there'll be like another side of the system that will have a negative result. So I can just see these things happening, and it's more convenient for me. But I mean, that's just my advice. So you're gonna have to read the studies for that at the very least, because it's not gonna be socialism. It's gonna be laissez-faire capitalism is bad, welfare is good. Here's all the evidence where welfare is good, and yeah. But I would like to ask you how do you plan on using history to debate Mouthy or stuff from history?
Hmm. Well, uh, I mean, I think there's many ways it could be done. I haven't thoroughly thought through exactly how I would go, but I mean, just take the United States, for example, how successful that's been, and how, for instance, in the late 19th century, United States, which I think may have been the freest time overall in our country's history, at least in terms of economic freedom, uh, there was tremendous progress during that era. I mean,
Talk
people.
talk talk to me about that progress. Give me some examples.
uh,
No, really.
well, I mean, there's like railroads were um,
So 18,
being
1820, 1830, I think they invented the railroads. Yeah.
well. It was there. I mean, earlier than the late 19th century, but I think it was growing. It
Yeah.
was growing a lot. I think throughout the century, the the transcontinental railroad, I think, was established maybe 1869, something like that. I
And
think
the
it
point
was.
The point is that this happened in a free economy in the private sector. Yes.
Well, I mean, not totally free, but much freer than it is today, economically speaking. So there's never been a completely laissez-faire society, but the more society has been, the closer it's gotten to that, the better off it's been, I think, and the more progress has been made. And also, there were many millions of immigrants coming to the country during that time. So if I think that speaks to the attraction of that kind of society. People were they find themselves having better opportunities in America. They were attracted by the freedom and opportunities that existed in the United States. So I think just America is a great example of how a society built on the kind of principles that objectivism advocates is very successful. So I think that's one way I would use history.
I particularly like all the inventions
Yeah,
that happened in the second half of the 19th century.
right.
And
Morse
I also
telegraph,
telegraph, yeah,
car.
telephone. Some It's funny because I saw like it's kind of cute. They have all these old movies on YouTube, which is basically like black and white, fixed up, movies. And there was one about innovations in that period. I think 1850 to 1910. So pretty much the period we're discussing.
Mm-hmm.
And they called it the Age of Miracles. Now, that's a really good title, but as far as I know, everything I read about this period is called the Gilded Age on Wikipedia. And as far as I understand, this is because of correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not American, but this is a lot to do with the influx of immigrants to the country who were very, very poor. And even though, like at the time, there was work, there were industries that were setting up, existing wage earners saw the wages rise by between 40 and 60%. But because there were so many immigrants just coming into the country with very little money, it seemed like they were very rich, and there was a big divide between the very rich and the very poor. I could be wrong, but if you could let me know your opinion.
Okay. Well, before I say anything, I should maybe say that this is an area of history which I am maybe relatively weak, is a way to put it. I jump around in my study of history. Recently, I've been studying medieval Islam, actually. So I'm reading about Islam in the 900s. That's where I've been most recently. But I've also had periods where I'm studying England in the 17th century and Greece in the 5th century. So I jump around a lot. I've read some about all periods of history, but I think relatively little about the era we're talking about right now. So I'd like to read more about it. But I think there is some value to going through in a certain order. But anyway, I can say, based on what I have read, the term the Gilded Age, I think maybe is not the best term for that age. I've heard an objectivist historian say that it's better to call it the inventive age, because that gets more to the essence of what the age was about. I'm not sure that's even the best term. Maybe it's better, but I'm still not sure it's the best. Maybe the progressive age would be even a better term.
I think the thing is that even if you say this is the age I call the progressive age, socialists or social democrats will say, well, this was called the Gilded Age. It's horrible. Why are you trying to replicate it?
Right. So they have their own terminology and their set of smears, I think, for so much of history, including especially including the so-called Gilded Age. And for instance, they call the people like Rockefeller and Carnegie the robber barons. which I think is an unjust characterization. So definitely I would want to contest some of their terminology. I think Gilded Age may be another term that should be contested. If you say something is gilded, I think what that might connote or maybe denote even, that is mean literally, is that something is just covered in gold, but on the inside, if you scratch the surface, it's not gold. So it's not good all the way through. If you take gold to be a symbol of goodness, like you want a ring to be solid gold. If it's a genuine gold ring, you don't want to be sold something that's just gold on the outside, but it's plastic or something on the inside. Then it would just be gilded. It looks like it's gold, but it's not. So I think maybe that word is kind of used as a metaphor. Maybe this age appeared to be great and all this progress and wealth, but really that's just the surface appearance. That's ignoring all the terrible conditions people had to work in, and the poverty that existed at the time. And people just get focused on this veneer of prosperity and get duped into thinking that things were good when they actually weren't, if you dig a little deeper. Now, I'm not sure that's why it's called the Gilded Age, or why some people called it the Gilded Age. This is just something I might have heard this somewhere, or maybe I'm just speculating. I don't know. But in any case, I think a lot of Marxists or socialists are going to say, they're going to point to a lot of problems, or at least alleged problems, about that time period. And I'm going to want to have some kind of response to those. And I can say some things, but I'd like to do more research and be able to say even more than I can now. So that is an area that I want to beef up my knowledge in.
Okay. That was just my questions. I mean,
Okay.
I again, if you are gonna do debates about economics, you may need to like just spruce up on a few studies or relevant studies. And yeah, if certainly if you want to present the age of the second half of the 19th century, then know as much about now. To some degree, there's a disadvantage because people remember it unfavorably in the context of the Gilded Age. But there has been like this research. I don't know if this is obviously a very bad thing, but there's been this resurgence of Marxist Leninists who basically call themselves tankies, or other people call them tankies, who argue that the USSR was not that bad, and everyone kind of doesn't really read about the USSR because they've already summarized that it is bad. And if someone says, actually, I have like all this deep knowledge and they grew their GDP and the CIA said that they have plenty of food and all that kind of stuff, then people are just kind of taken aback because no one actually studies about the USSR. It's condemned as a failed experiment. But if you say, for example, well, this period of time wasn't as bad as people think, and you have a lot of information about it, then it could be to your advantage in a.
Uh-oh, I lost you again. Hold on. Okay. All right. How about now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Now, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Sorry about that. I switched over to my AirPods and that didn't help. I think it might have made it worse. So I guess if this happens again, I'll just have to wiggle the plug on my regular headphones. But anyways, you were talking about Marxist Leninists giving the impression that there wasn't something that bad, because they say if you dig a little deeper into the data, you'll see that USSR wasn't so bad.
Yep.
So.
No one thought about actually going over that data.
Yeah, so it might be worth my time to look into some of that. Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's just an issue of priority. So what do I want to beef up my knowledge most on? It could be partly a function of who I'm debating. Um, surely is at least partly a function of that, and how much time I've got. But yeah, there's endless amounts of debate preparation one could do, and I think one just has to balance the value of that versus all the other things one could be doing, and constantly try to optimize everything. So I know you're more on the you're very interested in economics. So um,
It's funny because I wasn't originally. When I originally studied objectivism, I was really interested in the epistemology and concept formation, and I found it really helpful in my work. And I was always very bad with understanding people and understanding office politics and what motivates people and stuff like that. And then after I learned the concept formation, I could see like steps in advance. I could see someone doing things several steps in advance because I understood certain core concepts. It was very cool. But the thing with economics is just because I've been on Earth for a little while and I've seen different businesses and I understand certain things that just gave me this advantage over people who have no clue about the economy whatsoever. It's a lot of it is, and you may have seen this yourself, conspiracy theories, make believe abstractions, abstract theories about stuff. It's not like it doesn't relate to anything I've seen or experienced in life. And I've started from meek beginnings to where I am now. Not that now is okay. I'm happy where I am now. I'm just keep going at it. Um, so it just and I'm very good with systems. So like I'll pick up like on how businesses run and stuff like that, and how it's managed. But it just an advantage to know that a lot of the stuff they say in economics are just nonsense. Like it doesn't compute, doesn't make sense. There's no connection to reality. And I started digging a bit more into this, and then I could see like which is the right one and which wasn't.
right. Yeah, I just remembered a show Yaron Brook did some months ago on the happiness studies. So this is not economic studies, which you were just talking about, but people often claim that the Nordic countries are the happiest countries in the world, and Yaron did a show where he looked at some of these studies, or one of them at least, and he tried to debunk them. I think he was made sense what he said, I think. So that's
By the way,
something.
the actual happiness metrics, the USA is only like a few decimal places behind Norway. It's not like Norway is like galloping ahead of everyone else. It's like really a tiny difference
Mm,
between the first top 10 countries.
within the margin of error, maybe.
No, I
Um,
again, it's a survey. Like, do you
mm,
feel happy out of 10? But I'm exaggerating, but it's a survey and a subjective survey,
mm,
and it's only a few decimal places different. So it could be like maybe the Scandinavians also live in a very cold environment. So maybe it's like, other factors than paying high taxes. In fact, I see very little connection to happiness and paying high taxes. I don't know about you, but I can't find any study that's, in fact, I found the opposite, that if you pay high taxes, you'll be less happy.
mm. Right. Yeah. One of the points I remember Yaron making is that what's meant by happiness in these studies is not what you might think just based on the word. It's something more like contentment, or like are you in that means, I mean, maybe you could think of contentment as being a synonym of happiness, but I think the sense it's meant in these countries, or maybe whatever word is used in their languages, it's not really as positive a sense as it is in the US. It just means things aren't bad or something. It's not like things are really good. Um, I'm probably butchering this at least a little bit. So go to your on show to hear the actual thing. But anyways, I think that was part of his analysis. That it wasn't really happiness as we would think of it in the U.S. at least that's being measured. It's something. Um, it, it's like I think he was saying they have low expectations, and since they have lower expectations, it's much easier to meet their expectations, and then they call that happiness, meeting these low expectations. So it's not genuine happiness. It's more like mediocrity or something. Um, so if you have a low bar for um, what you should be doing and you meet that, okay, well, maybe they meet that, but are they really flourishing, happy people in the sense that we would mean that here? Oh,
But
maybe not.
technically, people would use the word flourishing, and this is part of the sleight of hand to some degree. They would take the word flourishing, they would take that happiness report, and say, look, these people pay high taxes, they have high welfare spending, they're very happy, therefore, this sort of government is good for a flourishing life. They would use that word.
Mm. Yeah. So right now, I just know secondhand based on what I've heard from Euron's analysis. But yeah, if I have a debate with Mouthy and if it seems like this is a topic that would come up, then I'll probably take a look at that study firsthand.
Right? I think we've talked about Malthus enough.
Okay. Yeah, we can move on from him.
Don't know why he's a fetish with objectivists, so objectivists have a fetish with him.
Well, he's I think he said he left a comment on one objectivist channel, and that's what initiated one of his debates. But I don't know how his other debates came about. If he contacted them or vice versa or what. Maybe he'll see this, but I've already had a tiny bit of communication with him, so which I initiated. So, is there any topic you want to go to next, or is this enough, or what?
Yeah, I mean, if you had anything you want to ask me.
Okay, maybe we can talk a bit about veganism. I've seen on some of your videos that that's a topic you're interested in.
Yes.
It's a topic I've not thought much about at all, very little actually. But since you're interested in it, and I've got you here, how about we talk some about that? So you're a vegan, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, and I think in one of your videos you tried, or you said maybe it can somehow be. Well, what is the connection between that and objectivism? Do you think you can infer from the moral principles of objectivism that one should be a vegan, or is it independence of objectivism? How do you see that?
I don't think I can. So it's like I can answer this, and then it's like, oh, how can I say this? I don't think you can force people in general to be vegan. Like, I don't think you can get into a situation where there's an extrinsic moral law that says you have to be vegan, otherwise it's immoral. I rely a lot on virtue ethics from objectivism, but virtue ethics is a popular topic now with Stoicism being on the rise and ancient Greece philosophy being on the rise. Spinoza? No, it doesn't have virtue ethics. Sorry. Um, but so I would say a lot of people don't really know what goes in the process of killing an animal till it arrives on your plate. Raising an animal, killing it arrives on your plate. They don't have that context. In a lot of times when you show people that context and you say, look, I know that the plate arrived in front of you and everything, is very colorful and smelled nice and you want to eat it, but now that you know what the context was from A to Z, do you still want to eat meat or other animal products? then you can have like a discussion on that. I feel that people's values come into play here. They have to make this decision if it violates the virtues or values. And to some degree, it could be an emotional choice in the sense that in objectivism, I would say that you at the very least thought objectively about which values you should go after and which virtues you should go after. And if and the role of the emotions is to see if you're on the right course there. So as in man is a self-made soul. You decide on which direction to go. And if harming animals violates your values, violates your virtues, then you can decide not to do it. Now, I can some people will still decide to do it. There are animal predators that will still decide to do it, and I can't force them to do it or not do it. That to one side. I would say that obviously because animals can't communicate with us, and that's a big deal. And Ayn Rand epistemologically thinks that animals don't have the ability to reason, which could be true, or like the capacity for reasoning is very how can I say very low, or it's very like not conceptual but concrete bound to some degree. um, the thing that I'm struggling with outside of objectivism is that there are objectivists that have pets. We do know that they're very social animals. They're between humans and animals. Animals are social between themselves. They recognize faces. They recognize commands. Um, some are smarter than other, obviously. There are other animals with bigger brains than us, and there's a wide animals, for example, have dreams. If an animal had a friend, uh, a good friend, and then they didn't see each other for 2 years, and the animal friend came back, they would recognize them and start playing with them. I feel that some of that is ignored, like because we don't fully know what that is now. I think obviously the technology at the time of Ayn Rand wasn't available to do anything more, and I don't know if necessarily we have a lot more information today. But I don't know if it's I don't know if it's as black and white as it is. Obviously, there is something there, um, not to the level of humans, but I don't know if it's as low, low life or low form of life as it's been depicted in objectivism necessarily. I could be wrong, but I think it's worth investigating. But in any case, for me personally, if I were to eat meat now, it would violate my virtue of justice, integrity, and honesty.
Okay. Justice, integrity, and honesty. Okay. So you said you don't think it should be illegal to kill and eat animals, but I guess from I'm also getting that you do think, at least in your case, it would be immoral because it would violate these virtues.
It will be moral in my case. If you're saying that do animals have rights? Um, Currently, obviously, they don't have rights, and in objectivism, you can't advocate for them to have rights. You can say that you can say that you can't be cruel to animals because that reflects negatively on you. I think there's a point with regards to rights that some people in the vegan community have raised, which I should read more on, which like animals could have rights in the context of children, or like same rights as children, or or rights as I don't know, like not full adults, but like a lower form of rights. I haven't read too
Mm,
much into that, but currently as it stands, it's not illegal, but it is immoral for my stance.
okay. Okay, that's so. I guess we could talk about or more deeply about why it's immoral. So you said you think it violates these three virtues, objectivist virtues, anyways: justice, integrity, and honesty.
Well,
So
it will violate my virtues.
your virtues. Well, I mean, those are common to anyone who's an objectivist. Those are three of the basic virtues. Well, I mean, even within, so
So
Ayn Rand lists 7 virtues: rationality, independence, integrity, honesty, justice,
let
productiveness,
me
pride.
let me yeah, right. Let me explain my sense. If I now start eating meat, it would violate these three virtues.
Okay. And okay, so we can talk about, let's talk about that some. So let's take one of them and try to get clear, at least for me to understand how it violates it. So pick one of those three. Can you just take one of those three and walk me through how the virtue is violated?
Well, I mean, if I eat meat and I don't feel I need to eat meat, then I don't know why I would, but let's say I would, then I've caused harm to another sentient being, ended their life when I didn't need to do that. It's a luxury. It's not something I need to sustain my life with. Um, and it's unjust.
Okay, so it's unjust. So
Like, why did I
what?
have to harm the animal for?
Yeah. So one of the first things, maybe the very first thing that comes to mind, is a formulation in Leonard Peikoff's book, Objectivism: The Philosophy of Ayn Rand. The section on justice is titled, I think it's Justice as Rationality in the Evaluation of Men, if I'm remembering correctly. So if it's rationality in the evaluation of men, well, that would exclude animals, which isn't to say you should be irrational or it's okay to be irrational in evaluating or dealing with animals or anything. I mean, rationality is the basic virtue, so you should always be rational, whatever you're dealing with, even if it's an inanimate object. You don't want to, you know, use a spoon as a fork. That would be irrational to do, not in your self-interest. Um, but if we're talking in immoral, because it would be immoral, uh, maybe a small instance of morality, but immoral nonetheless. But I wonder if the treatment of animals is somehow outside of the scope of justice. If we are understanding justice as treating other human beings in a way that's rational, maybe you could still say it's irrational to eat animals, but it wouldn't be unjust according to the objectivist definition, if the objectivist definition is being rational in your dealings with other human beings. Um, so,
Well, I
go ahead.
obviously, obviously, I'm harming another being for what I would consider no good reason, and causing them pain and suffering. I could be extending it slightly further than what objectivism originally intended, but at the very least, its virtues apply to my life. And I do warn you, Dan, if you put yourself in a logical situation where animals have very little meaning, that I could play with it in another direction that you won't find very pleasant.
What do you mean? I'm not sure if you want to go there.
Well, it's up to you, because if we can already establish even within objectivism that you should not harm animals, you should not be cruel to animals. So I don't think that even even Pykov would disagree with that, considering he had dogs, and Ayn Rand had cats. Um,
Mhm.
so to some degree, there is that element. But if you word it as in you shouldn't be cruel to animals because it reflects poorly on you, as in for your own integrity, let's say, then and animals are like outside the scope of any consideration, then I could play around with that in a negative way as well.
Well, I'm not saying they're outside the scope of any consideration, just outside the scope of justice. So it still might be within the scope of rationality to say, or so you might still say it's irrational to be cruel to animals, and I think it is, and I think Ayn Rand and Leonard Peikoff would say that and have said that. At least I know Leonard Peikoff has said that, but it's just the point I'm raising right now is just, is it an issue of justice, or is it rather an issue of rationality? Maybe what's more relevant to talk about here is just whether it's rational, because I mean, if it's wrong because it's irrational, it's still, that's plenty of reason not to do it. It doesn't matter so much which virtue it violates. If it violates any virtue, then that's sufficient reason not to do it, or at least that
So
counts
why
against doing it.
so why would I not choose not to eat animals, you mean? Why would I rationally
Yeah. So
choose not to eat animals?
you said it causes needless pain and suffering. Was that basically?
Well, it's not in the context of utilitarianism, and I'm trying to like reduce pain and suffering in general, but let's put it this way, right? Like if the animal was in front of me right now and I had to kill it and prepare it to then eat it, I'm like, I don't feel I need to. I can just, get a vegan meal or something, or vegetarian, I don't know, vegan meal or something like that. I don't need to eat the meat. I can eat something else, or I have a variety of different things that will sustain my life. And I would argue, looking at some of the nutritional science literature, that potentially, and again, this is just my opinion, probably my life would be extended if I choose not to eat it. Now, if the animal was in front of me and I had to take action to kill it and prepare it, I would choose not to. In fact, I would choose bad. I would feel bad if I did kill it and then prepared it. It would affect me very negatively going forward, and I may even have flashbacks afterwards. And I would say that reduces rationally speaking, that would traumatize me in some way and reduce the quality of my life. Now, I would also say that I have heard people say that I've shot something at a distance and I didn't feel anything wrong with that. I'm sure that shooting even human beings at a distance isn't as bad as it seems, but as a joke. But I think like if you kill something upfront and personal, it's traumatic. And I know that people in the meat industry that do that as a living do have PTSD from it, and they don't stay in the industry for too long. Um, but yeah, that's my take on it. Again, I'm not trying to, and if any of you wants to investigate what the animals go through from when they're raised, how they're raised, to when they're killed, uh, I would encourage them to see the process to understand the full context. Um, and that's my rationale.
Okay. By the way, speaking of animals, do you hear some crows flying around and cawing in the
Yep.
background?
They
Okay.
must like you.
Well, they just came here a few minutes ago, I think. I've been trying to tune them out, but I was hoping it was only audible by me and not by whoever's hearing this through the recording. But hopefully, it's not too distracting. I have to do
Sing
this
your
up.
song, Dan.
um, wow, there are a lot of them on the.
Maybe they're tuning into your show.
Yeah. Um, maybe if I make a noise, they'll all.
What you need to do, you need to leave them some puzzles and tricks. They like that kind of stuff.
That made most of them fly away, at least
They're gonna get
further.
revenge
So.
on you, Dan.
Well, hopefully it'll be at least lower volume crow calling. Um, this is it's crow busting for me. If anyone knows the reference in objectivism, there's too much to hold in mind with all these crows and then this discussion going on at the same time. It's overwhelming my crow. That's a reference to introduction to objectivist epistemology for anyone who wants to know the story. I won't try to tell it or explain the significance of it. But I think I was able to focus enough on what you were saying to get enough to say something in response. One thing that came to mind was a story from my fishing story. So when I was a kid, I was 9 or 10 years old, and it was the one and only time I caught a fish. I was fishing off a pier in Florida and down there visiting some relatives. And I caught a fish and I reeled it up, but I didn't want it. I didn't plan to eat it that night or do anything with it. But there was another fisherman down the pier who said, "Hey, like, if you don't want that fish, can I have it?" And I felt kind of reluctant, but I did give him the fish. But I felt bad about it because I was the one responsible for ending that fish's life, or I would have been, if he took it home and then he cooked it for dinner. And my mom, who was around on the pier, I asked her, I said, "Hey, Mom, could you could you tell that guy to throw the fish back in?" So, and she did that. She asked him to throw it back in. I don't know if she told him, because my son feels bad about it. But anyway, she threw it back in. So that fish went back into the ocean. And I don't know if it just, got eaten by another fish right away or what, but at least I wasn't the one who was responsible for its death. Although maybe I injured it enough so that it then was less able to live. So maybe I had a hand in it. But anyways, I get the point that, like, if you're directly involved with it, if you're the one doing the killing, that can be uncomfortable and maybe traumatic even, depending on the details. But if you're more removed from it, then it's not traumatic for you. And
it's obviously the plate arrives ready. The meat's
right.
cooked. It doesn't even resemble anything. Even to some degree, before I was vegan, I used to take like a full chicken, like from the supermarket, and even cutting it up into bits, that didn't feel that great.
Uh,
But yeah, I mean,
but I think it's something you could get used to. Like, this is just, I mean, if I, and also I think it probably depends on your background. If you grow up on an island or something and your only way to survive is by catching fish, then maybe you'll never even think twice about it. It just seems totally natural. But me, I was thrown into not thrown into the situation, but it was an unusual situation for me. But maybe over time, if I did it more, then I would just become less sensitized to doing
say the
that kind
same
of thing.
For killing humans as well.
And I do kill other life forms like ants or something, or gnats or mosquitoes.
Yeah, I don't go all the way that far down.
So, but the more and I would kill a mountain lion or something if it was attacking me. And
Yeah. So let me explain in that sense. Like, yeah, if an animal is attacking you, I'm not saying lay down your life by
yeah.
any sense. And if you were stuck on a desert island and you needed fish to live, then I'm not saying lay down your life. And if to some degree, like in the vegan society one, like there's a thing about doing medical experiments on animals, and I think they said it's okay, but I'm pretty sure that they also, but they, in the same context, are against doing it for no good reason, like just repeating an already proved experiment on mice over and over again for no good reason. Then they would be against that. But yeah, Philosophically speaking, it's a new subject. I remember having a debate about this, and it's still not completely formed. It's only been some decades. There are a lot of people, like, even today, like, arguing like which philosophy is the right way to address it. I have virtue ethics, so I'm very flexible about it. There are people who want a more deontological positions. Some people want like a Hegelian master-slave relationship. Some people want Kantian. Well, Kant is deontological, but there's all sorts of positions on it, and it's really in its infancy, philosophically speaking. I mean, even vegetarianism has been around for some hundreds of years. There's religious context to why you should be vegetarian. There's philosophical context, but it's a very very new subject.
So one of the considerations that I think is relevant here is it causing needless pain or suffering? I think you used a phrase like that at some point. And I think that's relevant. Like, if it is needless, if you're not getting any benefit from it, like you need this fish to survive, or you need to kill the mountain lion because it's going to attack you, um, those are clear cases where I think you're not causing needless pain and suffering. You're serving some benefit. So I think medical research on animals does. I mean, I haven't looked into this closely, so, but I mean, at least on first blush, it seems reasonable to think that if you don't want to experiment on humans, but you want to test the drugs before you try them in humans, it seems like a good idea to test them on similar, at least as similar as you can get, life forms that aren't human. And that, again, that's not needless pain and suffering. That's for a humans. That's a human serving cause. And likewise with just eating pleasurable tasting food, that's not needless. I think, meat can taste very good. So it is serving the pleasure needing role, that, or the fact that humans need pleasure to survive. I mean, it's a psychological need. If you don't have pleasure, what's the point of surviving? So I think pleasure has a survival role. So, I mean, in all the cases that I think it's defensible to eat animals, it's not a case of causing needless pain or suffering. It's always, or I mean, you might think that the pleasure you get from, or the value you get from eating animals is outweighed by the disvalue of causing the pain and suffering. And I guess that's an argument you can make. And I guess I wouldn't want to dismiss that out of hands. Maybe in some cases it is true that the value you get is outweighed by the disvalue you cause. But I guess that has to be, maybe that should be dealt with on a case-by-case basis rather than a general, like you said, if you need the fish to survive, that's the only way you can live. And sure, even you, a vegan, is going to eat the fish. So there's not like there's no principle that it's wrong to eat meat. It's just, are the benefits of doing it good enough to justify it?
I guess you could see it. It will hurt my soul to do it, or it will scar my soul to do it in a romantic sense. If I have to live, then if like something's attacking me or I have no other choice, then sure. But in terms of regular day-to-day sustenance and stuff like that, like really, I've been doing it for like I don't know, 7 years now. Not a real struggle by any sense. And I'm not like I used to be more health. Sorry.
All right.
COVID. I used to be more health conscious, and I used to get like all vegetables and stuff like that. And I'd still eat salads and stuff, but I'm a little more relaxed about it now. But yeah, it's fairly easy. once you get like a few favorites in, a few substitutes every once in a while. I ate meat most of my life, so once in a while a substitute is nice. But it's fine, really. I don't actively like, oh my God, I don't actively like discipline myself not to eat meat. I just don't care anymore about it.
Hmm. Yeah. I wonder if my feelings about this would change if I looked into the like, videos that you can see about the conditions these animals are sometimes kept in. Like, I mean, there's sometimes people advertise their products as being free range chicken or something, or cage free chicken, which, you know, they're conveying the idea that these animals were raised in a um, you know, more humane or less bad kind of situation than others, like factory farms are sometimes portrayed as being, um, and that makes it easier for people to consume the products, uh, which I guess that's reasonable. I mean, all things being equal, would I rather have meat that was raised in a pleasant kind of life, as opposed to you know, they were just jammed in a cage and had a miserable time? Sure, yeah, uh, I'd rather eat meat from an animal that lived a good life. But I said all things being equal. But now, what are the cost effects of that?
Well,
Um,
it would be more expensive. I mean, um, I think I think in general, so in general, in general, the factories are where you're going to get the vast majority of your meat, like 90 something percent. If you go out of your way and look for some something like that was treated more humanely, quote unquote, probably be more expensive. Some people like to do it because, back in the day, like grass-fed meat and all that nonsense. But with regards to chicken specifically, the free range doesn't necessarily have to mean much, because instead of being in battery cages that are like several layers off the ground, they'll just all be on the ground. It's still a closed, dark, like pen, like a very large pen, where they have on the ground these like water drinking facilities. And the idea of it being in the dark all the time, it's like as if you're always sleeping, so they grow faster. And typically, one have to see, but I'm under the impression within 6 weeks they can be eaten, the chickens. They're grown very quickly, and a lot of them are very, very young. Some of them grow up deformed, um, and they're very close to one another. I think in terms of like pork, I'm pretty sure 97% is factory farm CAFOs. I think with cows, some people in America would like to like grass fed them, and it may be like maybe it's not in the 90%, maybe it's like lower than 90%. But even then, it's like if you want to make a profit, in a sense, it has to be optimized. You're giving them these pellets, soy pellets, with like chicken feather. I believe it's soy pellets with chicken feathers mixed and corn, perhaps, and they eat it because you can't letting them graze. So letting them graze would mean they would live for longer. So like a grazing one would be 36 months. A CAFO would be 18 months. But yeah.
I wonder if that would count as, maybe it should count as cruelty to animals. Like, so I said before that objectivists like Leonard Peikoff, I would guess Ayn Rand too, were opposed to cruelty to animals. And maybe something like factory farming, at least in certain cases, like these chickens who you're saying are raised in the dark the whole time, just these cages, maybe that should count as cruelty to animals. It's not like you're breaking the bones, like, you know, imagine just going up to a chicken and just, you know, breaking its legs or something. You're not doing that, but It's another form of cruelty. I think one could argue, just keeping them in these very cramped, dark, maybe that's just that's another form of cruelty. And if you're against cruelty to animals, maybe that should count. And one should only eat chicken, or one should at least strive to make efforts to eat chicken that is not raised in those kinds of conditions. Maybe that is the moral thing to do if one opposes cruelty to animals. I mean, this is all new thinking to me because, as I said, I haven't thought about this before, but that seems like at least a reasonable position. Whether it ultimately holds up to scrutiny, I would want to withhold judgment for now, but it's at least a view I would consider. Maybe it's right. Maybe I should only. Maybe I should try to eat free-range chicken. Maybe that's the moral thing to do. Even so, I guess there's. So here's a. Let me go in this direction. Let's say that one concludes that factory farming is a form of cruelty to animals, and that therefore one should at least strive not to eat food that's been raised in that way, animals that have been raised in that way. Now, what about the free range animals? Is it bad even then to eat animals? Uh, what do you think about that? I guess. Well, let me not speculate. So, if all the animals were raised in good conditions, um, do you think it's still immoral to eat them? Uh-oh, did I lose you? Oh, I see you say yes, yep, in the chat here. Let me adjust the audio, see if I can get you back. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay, now I got you back. So I guess you heard my question.
Yeah.
And your
So,
answer is yeah, yeah.
so the question is, if animals have had a good life, is it cruel to kill them? I mean, to some degree, certainly, because they wanted to continue living their life. Having said that, if you would like to eat an animal that died of natural old age, that could be fine. You know, had a heart attack, had a good life. You know, the bull had a good life with a lot of other female cows, but time creeps up on you, and he just had a heart attack after that last one. So yeah, but I look at it. I look at it a bit differently because I'm a bit of a someone who likes innovations. We have all of these food innovations at the moment. So, for example, there are these two large companies in America. I don't know large, but two large-ish that make meat-like burgers. I think it's called Impossible Foods and Beyond Beef or Beyond Meat, and it's pretty decent. It's a touch on the expensive side. I think they're lowering their prices a bit now. Certainly, if you put that in a burger and some sauces, it's very, very realistic. And from a food production point of view, I think it's a combination of pea protein, steam and pressure, and some other like ingredients. And you don't have to wait 18 or 36 months for that to be raised and then killed, and it let off like a bunch of just from like your own concerns. Like here in the UK, a lot of the poo from cows goes into our rivers and into our waters that then need to be cleaned, and you don't have that issue. You just have like a very neat process where a bag of pea protein powder arrives to your factory and some other things, and you put it together, and you can deliver it at a relatively cheap cost that you can sustain the entire planet. Now, to some degree, the more countries come online in terms of higher GDP, they would be interested in eating meat just like the rich countries do. So when they start coming online and they start getting rich and richer, they would want to do what rich countries do. And I think that right now there's a huge number of animals in the animal agriculture just to feed the West. So people in America and stuff like that. So 40% of all arable lands are taken for raising animals. We could be using this to, I don't know, build new houses or build farms for wheat and stuff like that. We could feed more of the world if we didn't have to raise animals in this somewhat highly inefficient way. And I think that when more countries are looking to eat meat, we can give them these alternatives, which should be cheaper over time and don't need to use as much resources in terms of conservation, and they're able to do it at a much quicker rate than waiting for a cow to live 18 to 16 months.
So artificial meat as a solution.
I mean, it's kind of exciting, at least from my point of view.
Yeah, yeah. I guess that's another case where all things being equal, yeah, go for the artificial meats.
I mean, I would recommend you try one of those burgers. I mean, I don't know
I've
where
had
you are,
I've
but
had like yeah, I've had imitation meats. Um, I wouldn't say it's exactly. I think I can tell a difference,
okay.
but maybe not enough of a difference to, which is not to say it's worse. Maybe it's sufficiently good, but I think there is a difference you can taste.
So I think those two companies really stand out in terms of noticing a difference. Uh, I'm sure enthusiasts will probably still notice a difference, but I don't.
Hmm.
And yeah, if you think that, look, this is tasty enough, then see how you feel about it.
Yeah. So, I guess what one or two other thoughts on this.
If we could slightly speed it up because it's getting a bit
Oh,
late for me.
that's right. You're way ahead of me on time. Okay. Well, actually, I think that's probably this is a good place to end
Okay.
it. So, thanks for coming on. Enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me. Send Sam Seder my love next time you see him. But yeah, look, good luck with your debates. Prepare hard, and you should be okay. And best of luck with your YouTube channel.
Thank you, and same to you.
Thank you.
If you'd like to support more videos like this in my work of advancing Ayn Rand's ideas more generally, you can help by liking, subscribing, sharing, and becoming a contributor on Patreon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.